Picture Sally Field, the girl next door who morphed into an Oscar-winning powerhouse, an actress who carved her path through sitcoms, tearjerker dramas, and fierce stage roles. But behind that heartfelt smile was a spine of steel. She wasn't afraid to shut down powerful men, call out disrespect, or walk away from opportunities she couldn't stomach. Today, we reveal the 6 people who crossed that line. The men who thought they could control her, the shows that trapped her, the critics who belittled her, and even the icons who misjudged her. Because Sally didn't just survive Hollywood, she battled it. She didn't ask for respect, they had to earn it. So buckle up, because when Sally Field hates you, she doesn't whisper. She vanishes. And her silence, it resonates louder than any award speech. Let's start with the man whose charm turned to chokehold. Burt Reynolds. Sally Field and Burt Reynolds were Hollywood's golden couple, on the surface. They starred together in Smokey and the Bandit, and instantly became America's on-screen dream team. Off-screen, their chemistry was undeniable, and so was the chaos. Sally was in her 30s, rebuilding herself after years of being typecast. Burt was already a box office king, loud, macho, untouchable. What started as passion quickly turned to control. He wanted Sally on his arm, in his movies, and under his thumb. In her 2018 memoir, In Pieces, Sally wrote that Burt was charming, but also dismissive, emotionally distant, and addicted to power. He criticized her looks, her choices, her ambition. And behind the jokes was a pattern of undermining her confidence. She revealed that he even insisted on keeping her away from certain directors and roles, fearing she'd outshine him. He didn't want a partner. He wanted someone to orbit him. He was not kind, she wrote bluntly. He was not someone I could be myself around. They broke up and reunited several times, but the love always came with a leash. Eventually, she cut it. When Burt died in 2018, Sally issued a short, respectful tribute. But in her book, the truth was already on paper. She admitted she didn't tell him about the memoir because she didn't want to hurt him, but also because she didn't want him to talk her out of it. Her silence wasn't about forgiveness, it was about survival. Burt Reynolds never physically harmed her, but the emotional wear and tear left its own bruises. He tried to define her. She chose to redefine herself. And she did. After leaving him, Sally won her second Oscar. She starred in Steel Magnolias. She took the roles he once said she wasn't right for. Because Sally Field didn't just survive the relationship, she outgrew it. But if you thought the heartbreak ended there, just wait until you meet the producers who nearly buried her career in a habit and a halo. Before she was a 2-time Oscar winner, Sally Field was known as Sister Bertreel. Yes, the flying nun. And she hated every moment of it. Sally was just 19 when she was cast in the bizarre 1967 sitcom about a nun who could fly. The show made her famous, but it also made her feel small. Executives didn't care about her craft. They wanted a cute face and slapstick laughs. She later confessed, "I felt like a joke. I couldn't believe anyone took me seriously after that." Worse, when she tried to leave, the network threatened to ruin her career. She was trapped in the habit, literally and figuratively. It took years, therapy, and training at the actor's studio to rebuild her self-esteem and prove herself as a serious actress. She said in interviews that breaking free from flying nun typecasting was the hardest thing she ever did professionally. Sally never trashed the show publicly, but in her memoir and interviews, she made it clear. She resented the way it limited her, how it mocked her ambition, and how it tried to define her before she could define herself. But if you thought sitcoms were suffocating, wait until you hear about the director who humiliated her during one of her most vulnerable auditions. In 1976, Sally Field was desperate to break free from her flying nun image. She auditioned for the film Stay Hungry, directed by Bob Rafelson, a man with a reputation for brilliance and cruelty. The role required vulnerability, emotional nudity, risk. Sally showed up willing to bear all, emotionally and physically. But Rafelson reportedly treated her like she didn't belong in serious film. He undermined her confidence, mocked her audition, dismissed her experience. She later said, "I left that room feeling humiliated and ashamed." For a young woman fighting to be taken seriously, this wasn't just a bad audition, it was a scar. Rafelson's coldness confirmed her worst fear, that Hollywood only saw her as the goofy nun in a habit, not the actor aching to be seen. She never worked with him, never mentioned his name again until her memoir decades later. But that silence, it wasn't forgetfulness. It was survival. Sally's later success, Norma Ray, Places in the Heart, Steel Magnolias, wasn't just talent. It was rebellion against men like Rafelson who told her she wasn't enough. And if you thought this rejection stung, just wait until you hear about the co-star who dismissed her entirely, not because of her talent, but because of her age. When Sally Field joined the cast of Lincoln in 2012 as Mary Todd Lincoln, she was ready for a role that demanded power, poise, and emotional complexity. But while the film earned her praise, not every co-star was welcoming. Enter Tommy Lee Jones, brilliant, intense, and, according to Sally, totally uninterested in collaboration. In interviews, Sally hinted that Jones barely spoke to her off-camera. No camaraderie, no warmth, no eye contact unless the camera was rolling. She said it was like working with a stone wall. He was polite on set, but emotionally unavailable, cold, and disconnected. And for an actress who thrives on emotional give and take, that was devastating. It wasn't the first time she'd faced that kind of dismissal, but it hurt more coming from a fellow veteran, someone who, in another world, might have respected her. Instead, he reportedly saw her as the emotional one, not the equal. Sally didn't lash out in interviews, but her expression every time the name came up, it said enough. Because Sally Field didn't demand your approval, but if you gave her the cold shoulder, don't expect her warmth in return. But if you thought that clash was cold, wait until you hear about the director she fought on set and refused to let take the last word. When Steven Spielberg set out to make Lincoln, he had one person in mind for Mary Todd Lincoln, and it wasn't Sally Field. At 45, she was told she was too old. By the time the film was ready to shoot, she was 65. And Spielberg still wasn't convinced. He wanted a younger, fresher actress. Sally fought back. She demanded an audition, no guarantee, no promises, just the chance to prove herself. She studied Mary Todd's letters, researched her mental illness, her grief, her fury. And when she stepped in front of the camera, she transformed. Spielberg had to admit it, she was Mary. But the tension didn't end there. On set, Sally didn't play games, she challenged direction, asked hard questions, refused to be background noise. Spielberg, known for controlling his narrative, reportedly found her difficult. But Sally didn't care, because difficult to her just meant unwilling to be small. Years later, she admitted, "It took a long time for me to feel like I deserved to be in that room." And Spielberg, to his credit, said she stole the role, but the path wasn't paved. She carved it with grit and grace. And if you thought battles with directors were tough, wait until you hear about the woman she once admired, until ambition turned them into quiet rivals. On screen, they were the perfect Southern mother and daughter in Steel Magnolias, tender, sharp, unforgettable. But off-camera, Sally Field and Julia Roberts weren't exactly sipping sweet tea together. The tension wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't a diva showdown. It was worse, distance, cold glances, missed connections, and an unspoken wall between two powerhouse actresses. At the time, Sally was already an Oscar winner. Julia was the new Hollywood sweetheart. Field had depth, Roberts had heat. And whether it was generational or personal, the respect wasn't mutual. Years later, Sally admitted to feeling dismissed. She said younger actresses sometimes don't know how hard we had to fight. And while she never mentioned Julia by name, fans could read between the lines. The two women rarely shared stages after the film. No buddy interviews, no award night reunions, just silence. Insiders whispered that Julia, then in her early 20s, viewed Sally as a bit too intense. And Sally, she simply said, "Some people grow, some just glow." For Sally, admiration was earned, not assumed. And when that wasn't returned, she didn't force chemistry. She just kept working, winning, outlasting. Because Sally Field didn't need headlines to prove her worth, she just needed a camera and the truth. Sally Field didn't rise through Hollywood by playing nice. She rose by pushing back, when it was uncomfortable, when it was risky, when no one expected her to. She didn't hate easily, but when she was dismissed, disrespected, or silenced, she remembered. From controlling exes to cold co-stars, from powerful directors to quiet rivals. Sally Field never let anyone write her story for her. Because real legends, they don't fight to be liked, they fight to be heard. Thanks for watching Legends Unfiltered, where the spotlight fades and the truth steps forward.